Hey guys, Rorius here. Welcome to Eyes Like Pressed Flowers. This is a weird game, and the more I look at the main menu, the more I'm weirded out by the, flower eye things. This is so creepy. I don't know why it's so weirdly creepy. Now, the reason I'm playing this game is because when you guys suggested some games for me, I asked you guys back in October for some game suggestions for Halloween. And while it is no longer Halloween, I have still been meaning to play the games you guys had suggested. One of you guys suggested a game called In the Trees, a text-based horror game. I looked up In the Trees and I found a game by Caspian Depression Games called In the Trees, and it's a horror text-based adventure game. I went to go play it, but I saw that it was about 2 to 3 hours long, so I thought instead I saw that they had this game, and it's a small 15-minute experience. But yeah, still atmospheric horror interactive fiction. Let's begin. Enter your name. Your name is Rorius. Alright. The driver drops you off at the gate. The wheels crunch against the gravel as the car turns around, and the momentarily blinding headlights move back along the road, flashing briefly in the woods before they disappear entirely. You turn to the gate and try the handle. As promised, it is unlocked, and the gate opens into the property. Gravel crunches under your feet as you walk down the long, flat driveway to the house. The night is mild, and the country air is clean with a slight hint of humidity. Keep walking. You recall the letter you received several days prior. Dear Rorius, I know you've ignored my past invitations, but I can assure you this is an urgent matter which can only be properly addressed in person. I would be happy to host you at my house, where everything will be revealed in due time. I hope you will consider accepting. Keep walking. You reach the front door. As promised, it too is unlocked, and swings open on silent hinges to reveal a well-lit entryway. Your room is on the second floor. You can show yourself there directly. You walk through the entryway, which opens into a large open foyer with a curved staircase leading to the second floor. As you ascend the staircase, you notice how the soft carpeting dampens your footsteps. At the top of the staircase, a long hallway leads off into the darkness. Look around. Framed photographs are hung at regular intervals in the hallway. To your left, a photo of what appears to be a young mountain climber preparing to make an ascent. To the right, a photo of a group of people sitting on a bench, squinting in the sunlight. Okay, proceed down the hall. After walking some distance down the hallway, you come to a door on the left. Your room is on the left and will be unlocked. Let yourself in and make yourself comfortable. Again, my apologies for not being there to greet you in person. I hope the comforts of the house will keep you entertained. So the italic words were the words from the letter. We're recalling the letter's words. Enter the room. The room has a bed, a mirror, and a desk with a radio, a lamp, and a small stack of books. You set your bag on the bed, then sit at the desk. On it is a note. Apologies. Despite my best efforts, the radio seems to remain broken. I trust these books will keep you entertained. Examine the books. 5 books sit on the table. And so we can inspect A Coin for the Ferryman, The Fulcrum, Mushrooms of the Northern Woods, Surat Loring, The Complete Correspondence, or The Smiling Moon. I don't know if it matters what I choose. Mushrooms of the Northern Woods. A guide to identifying, gathering, and cooking nature's bounty. Compiled and edited by the Gorsive Fungi Society. Read the introduction. There are few things in life more satisfying than deriving one's primary sustenance directly from nature. While agriculture on any scale, from the humble backyard garden to the massive imperial farms of the southern plains, is a noble pursuit, it is still secondary to the purest form of direct communication with nature. Foraging. With wild mushrooms and other fungi, however, a complexity is introduced. Unlike most berries and edible leaves, mushrooms can be difficult to identify. with that difficulty compounded by dire consequences, in some cases, for an incorrect identification. This book has been written with the layman in mind, and is intended to demystify the process of mushroom foraging, while always favoring the side of prudence when it comes to potential errors. Put the book down. You're like, okay, I'm done. The coin for the ferryman, sure. Death and the afterlife in the Western mind. On the subject of death, our era is marked by two equal but opposite tendencies. First, the obsession with it, more so than in any era in recent memory. Second, the reluctance to discuss it in any but the most polite and vague terms. Our minds are compasses between these two poles, and we find ourselves spinning and bewildered by our plight. The more public the subject of death becomes in newspapers, studies, and popular tales, the more private a subject it becomes, with each of us daily bearing the weight of more and more of the departed souls of our fellow man. This book is an attempt to bring balance back to our discourse around this most taboo of subjects, and hopefully usher in a new era of mutual respect, and a place in every conversation, not just among the living, but also between the present and the lost, as one-sided a conversation as the latter may be. They are our progenitors, parents, brethren, and sometimes children, and we owe them space in our minds and hearts, as well as a modicum of our time. I don't know why, whenever I read, especially from like a book setting, I always put on this like fucking posh voice. Pretentious voice. The fulcrum. Being a study of wielding maximum persuasive power through minimal means. Duke Severin d'Auberge. D'Auberge. Lion and Lamb Books, Iliov. 1017. It is the nature of power to want more power, and by gaining power, those with it enable themselves to increase their gains, politically, economically, and romantically. For an exploration of the second, see my book Heavy with Coin. For the third, see my book Taming What is Wild. Both available from Lion and Lamb Books. Please write for more for a free catalogue. This book shall deal with the first, and arguably most advanced of the three, the acquisition and increase of political power. But, you say, I am but a simple man with a simple job, modest of income and God-given looks. I say to you, that is the thinking of a man who shall ever remain so. Even when small, the lion behaves as a lion, and by doing so expresses its dominion over the other members of the animal kingdom. By purchasing this book, you have taken the first step to becoming your future self. One who will rule instead of being ruled, and will answer to no one but himself. Sounds like bullshit to me. Whatever the case. Surratt Loring, The Complete Correspondence. Volume 2, Rivalry and Revolution, Tinderbox Books, Alvar, oh damn, so this is 100 less than 1,000, right? C is 100, right? Yeah, century. So 991? Yeah. Sometimes I'm so slow with that. You hold in your hands the second volume of one of the great correspondences of the modern era. While Alvar Surratt and Juliette Loring were both artists in the broadest sense, they were also poets, lovers of one another as well as a broad range of others, and political thinkers. While the latter category saw their views broadly diverge by the turn of the century, they nonetheless continued to engage spiritedly and respectfully with one another, even as Surratt found himself increasingly persecuted as a counter-revolutionary. This volume begins in the warm summer days of 893, when Loring had returned from her journey across the Vevelite Pampas, and settled into a new home in Illois. And ends midway through the winter of 897-898, when Surratt joined the faculty of the University of Talovia. As a visiting lecturer, readers will immediately grasp the marked shift in Surratt's tone from the first volume, when the aspiring academic had been forced to earn his living as a shoe salesman to the wealthy. There are still echoes of resentment to be found in this volume, but they are heavily mitigated by his newly upwardly mobile academic trajectory. Okay, inspect the Smiling Moon. Poems, Natasha Krista. This modest volume represents the final poems of Natasha Krista, whose impressive output was limited almost entirely to 3 years in her mid-30s, before she stopped writing entirely. The decades that followed saw her fade into semi-obscurity, and it was only near the end of her life that her work was rediscovered by a new audience. While the titular poem, with its 4 books of 10 stanzas each, is certainly her best-known work in this volume, there are other noteworthy poems, including The Sphere, Age of Uncertainty, and Hawks Tracing Circles in the Sky. There is also a remarkable short piece, The Eyeless Moon, which can be viewed as a brief counterpoint to the titular poem, counteracting that longer work's overall positivity with its bleak surrealism. You hear a faint sound in the hallway, like a footfall. You listen closely, but it doesn't return. The building is old and probably just settling. Examine the desk. I have inspected all these. Oh, nothing seems different about the book. Okay. The fulcrum. Nothing seems different. Mushrooms. Surratt and Loring. Nothing seems different. Smiling Moon. Oh. As you pick up the book, you notice it has a small gap midway through the pages, as if something is stuck between them. You open the book at the spot to find a pressed aconite flower. You remove the flower and place it on the desk. Gained pressed aconite. Continue reading. Beneath where the flower was pressed, a faint purple stain remains. The page contains a single brief poem, The Eyeless Moon. Eyes like pressed flowers. The Eyeless Moon. Each of us, says Parsus in his Alchemy of Mind, is a trinity. Mind, body, spirit in a husk, growing snarled and strange into one another, ebbing and whirling like crossing rivers, inseparable unto death. Perhaps I too am threefold. Body, an engine, spirit, its warmth, present but fading. My mind is another matter, a rocky sphere, flung away into distant sky, floating in the dark alone. A yellow-white moon in the night sky, illuminating the lands below without observing them. I shine through the windows of the world, into a million rooms. One of those rooms is the room in which I sit, writing. The light reaches me, but I do not recognize it as myself. Nor do I, the eyeless moon, see that which I, with my own light, illuminate. Interesting. As you close the book and put it back on the desk, apart from the others, a faint current disturbs the air around you, as if some unseen vent in the walls is opened. The air feels warm and slightly damp, as if pumped through somewhere deep within the house. You look more closely at the 4 other volumes on the desk. One of them, Mushrooms of the Northern Woods, seems to have a similar gap in its pages about halfway through. You open the book at the gap to find a pressed death cap. You remove it and place it on the desk. The text on the page reads, "Should not have any trouble identifying mushrooms from the primary group, nor differentiating them from potentially dangerous species. Group 2, on the other hand, contains several varieties that are less easy to distinguish from harmful variants. These dangerous species include numerous varieties of the genus Amanitae." That's the genus that includes the red and white classic toadstool, mushroom that is poisonous, that share traits with more common edible mushrooms, including those that are used in teas and tinctures, and as such can easily become deadly for untrained foragers. Not foragers, foragers. Most deviously, many of these varieties are not acutely poisonous, which, while lucky for those who ingest them just once, can lead to devastating long-term effects with continued use. One such example, ... gained pressed death cap. You place the book next to the smiley moon and the pressed death cap next to the pressed aconitum. Slowly, almost too slowly to be noticeable, the room grows slightly brighter, as if the moon emerged from behind a cloud. You look out the window at the full grey moon in the sky, casting its lights over the countryside. Oh damn. There was a picture. With the 2 books put aside, 3 books remain. Coin, Fulcrum, and this one. Oh. Induction. Death is the memory of souls. A conversation lost in time. Duct. Nature gains an acquisition, a simple step. Trod. Oh, now that I know that it can show pictures, I'm afraid. Hands of latter? Hands of latter days grasp the living still. I don't like it. You hear a sound through the door in the hallway. This time it's louder. And after a few moments it repeats, then repeats again. 3 footsteps. Or the house shifting uncannily 3 times. You freeze and listen intently, holding your breath and staring at the door. The sound does not repeat. And after a few moments you relax and begin to breathe again. Turn back to the desk. The light on the desk looks different. As if it has somehow shifted in tone from grey-white to a yellower hue. Oh, that looks like a skull. That doesn't look like the moon anymore. You turn back to the desk. A coin for the ferryman lies open, a pressed angel's trumpet. That's a very poisonous thing. Sitting on the right-hand page, tallow-colored in the pale yellow moonlight. I was about to say sunlight. We think always of any conversation between the living and the dead as contemporaneous? Contemporaneous. I've not heard that word before. In other words, existing at one time between one who is deceased and one who is not. Thank you for explaining. But what if we were to let go of our everyday view of linear time and attempt, instead, in what could arguably be forgivably fleeting moment of hubris, a forgivingly fleeting moment of hubris, to see the situation through the eyes of a deity, unbound by time and able to travel freely between past and present? Given these 2 conceits, first, that the living and dead can converse, and second, that different times may exist contemporaneously. It is simple enough to imagine one's living and dead selves conversing. But in such a scenario, would either self know? Gained pressed angel's trumpet. You place the book next to the smiling moon and mushrooms of the northern woods, and the pressed angel's trumpet next to the pressed death cap and pressed aconite. The room grows yet brighter, and you turn to look out the window. Yeah. Inspect the fulcrum. Oleander, another poisonous thing. Your breath feels shallow as you flip through the pages. About a third of the way through, a pressed oleander falls out and lands on the desk. You open the book at the spot from which the flower fell. Ah, it's the flower of the oleander. All I know is that oleander, the wood. The oleander wood is poisonous. We have it here in New Zealand, and if you skewer like a sausage or a marshmallow on it, and then roast it over a fire and eat it, can be enough to kill. Or at least very, very seriously sicken, make someone very sick. Conquered much of the known world before the age of 30, his riches were unending. He could live in luxury for all his days. Any woman he desired would be his. And yet he was still not satisfied. and yearned for the old days when he was a young soldier. And so he joined his own elite legion and marched north to Meliuson to engage the forces of Rorius, where he died in battle. His story is one of classical heroism, all the riches of a kinghood being worthless against the glory of battle. Yet in my view, his death was ultimately a failure. His bravery was unquestionable, yet in itself, it was a more devious form of cowardice. For in joining the battle at Meliuson, he ran from the true battle, which was with himself. The purest form of conquest is not power over others, but power over oneself. The ability to look oneself in the eye. Gained pressed oleander. Okay. So now we just have the Surratt Loring. Foxglove. Once again, another one that I've heard of. Your hands shake as you flip through the pages. About halfway through, the book pops open wider to reveal a pressed foxglove. You remove it and place it on the desk. The very first type of thing we got, pressed thing that we got, I didn't recognize it as being something poisonous. All the rest are ones that's names sound familiar. The text on the page reads, Iliore, I don't know, 179896. Dearest Alvy, I swear we are fated never to be in the same place at the same time. I heard that you would be in Fermac for the whole month, and so unlike myself, I hopped onto a train and arrived in the dead of night. Just one sleepy cab driver to greet me. He brought me to the hotel where they told me you'd left the week before. I was too tired to be disappointed, and slept until noon the next day. I spent the next 2 days wandering the winding alleyways around Old Town, which was all but empty after the festival. I felt like a ghost, or perhaps a soul in the afterlife, wandering a pleasant sunlit labyrinth. If you had been there, would we have embraced? Or would you have walked right through me, leaving only a slight disturbance in the air and a faint smell of Cyrillac. Cyrillac. I swear I sometimes feel like my soul left my body long ago, and all that remains, ... Gained press foxglove. Alright. A sudden thud in the hallway, followed by another and another. This time it's unmistakable footsteps. Sluggish, as though from someone drugged, or weary, or just awakened. They stop outside the door. A short pause, then 3 dull thuds against the door, as if from a closed fist. Listen. After a moment, a voice speaks, faint but clear, from the other side of the door. You remember once hearing your own voice played back through a tape machine. It sounded so tinny, so overconfident despite its weakness. From the other side of the door, that same voice says, My name is Rorius. I received an invitation to come to this house tonight, and was told this was my room. Can you open the door? The room grows brighter. Look out the window. Oh, these are the eyes like pressed flowers thing. The end. How very interesting. I was gonna say, I wasn't sure why we were gaining those poisonous things, and I thought there might be a puzzle to do with them, but there wasn't. But there was talks about, there was enough stuff to do with the fact that there was an idea of the dead talking to the living, talking to yourself. I was like, the steps that we keep hearing outside the door, that they're definitely going to be us, like in one of those like time loop kind of deals. But yeah, that's it. That is Eyes Like Pressed Flowers. This was a nice short thing, although it did take me a while to read it all, so it was a little more than 15 minutes for me. So yeah, I might play In the Trees next. There was a shorter version that had less puzzles in it, that was more story oriented, that could be good, or we could play the full like 2 to 3 hour one that has the full on puzzles, but 2 to 3 hours, that's going to be at least a couple episodes. And poor Rory's voice. But we'll see, we'll see. Whatever I end up deciding. If you like what you saw, hit like. If you want to see more from me, then subscribe. If you didn't understand the story, it's okay. It was a rather odd, like, obscure story. It reminded me a lot of, like, Edgar Allan Poe's, like, Doth the Raven Nevermore kind of thing. Where it was just about, the stories were all a kind of reflection of us. And either we were dead the whole time, or it was like we were playing two versions of ourself. I don't know. It's up to you to interpret it however you wish. But whatever the case, yeah. Thanks so much for checking out the video. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, share, join, all the buttons. Just press all the buttons down below, and I'll see you in the next video.